Well, hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach. And today we have with us Talia Bashani, who's a real estate attorney, negotiation expert, and founder of the Tab Law Firm. Talia, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, Mike. Good morning. Thanks for having me.
You are welcome. I'm looking forward to talking with you and learning from you because I always realize that people come from a variety of backgrounds, personally and professionally, and you always pick up these nuances of things they've learned. So I'm excited to talk about all the things that you do in your business to serve your clients. But get us started first with your story. What's your background? How did you get into the legal profession and also focus on real estate?
Okay, absolutely. So I started my career. I grew up in St. Louis and went to law school at WashU. And during law school, my dad had a mortgage business, and I pretty much kind of learned the ins and outs of the real estate world and mortgage business back in '05 to '08. And really kind of took a liking to the whole real estate world. So I moved to New York after graduating law school, got my first job at a mid-size, midtown law firm that practiced residential real estate transactions. And I was doing, I was a first-year associate, but I was doing many closings. I was closing up to probably 50 closings a month. So I really kind of hit the ground running and had a very hands-on experience at that firm. After about a year and change working at that firm, I prepared a new development offering plan, which is required in New York for any new construction buildings and sponsor sales. So the partner at the time offered me a $5,000 bonus in order to create this offering plan, which is like a 300-page book from scratch. I did not have a template. So I worked on that offering plan and got it accepted by the Attorney General's office. Then the market kind of took a dive, and the partner at the firm decided not to move forward with the project. And lo and behold, he stiffed me on my bonus. And I was deeply disappointed because I did all of the work. And I felt that I could not stay working for a firm that did not value my time or my effort. So with that, I put in my 2-week notice and decided to start my own business. And I was 28 years old at the time. I had an apartment on Wall Street that I was renting. And I started my practice out of my studio apartment on Wall Street for the first 5 years. And the nice thing was, my address sounded great at the time because nobody knew it was a residential building. And I was at 63 Wall Street. Suite 1502. And there was a tenant lounge on the 5th floor of that building. And so every time I had a client come in for a contract signing or a closing, I would have the doorman call me. I would come downstairs, I would greet the client, take them up to the 5th floor where we had a conference center. And that's pretty much where I held my closings and my contract signings. So I really built my practice from the ground up, from a moment of, defeat. I really wasn't expecting to go out on my own after a year and a half out of law school, but it was probably the best decision that I ever made. And when you're hungry and you are basically fighting to build a business, you really have to get out there and, just capture it.
You had
do
no
as much
safety
networking
net at all.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So with that, here I am 14 years later. I've built my business from the ground and hired an associate, hired a paralegal, and I pretty much do all residential real estate transactions, both in New York and in Florida. And I'm up to about, 40 to 50 closings. I've closed over $500 million in property value, over 10,000 transactions. So I've really worked with the best of the best as far as real estate agents and brokers, and have spent a lot of time negotiating deals. So as a lot of people don't know, New York is an attorney state, unlike Florida and many other states in the US, which is a title state. So what that means is here, the attorney does everything as far as negotiating the contract, having the client sign, negotiating the terms, and handling the whole transaction from start through finish. But we as the attorney rely on the brokers because the brokers are really the ones that are out there, pounding the pavement with the clients. They handle the whole offer and acceptance, negotiating the price, any contingencies. And then once the deal is accepted, it gets handed off to the attorneys, and that's where I come in. So it's really kind of a different hat that I'm wearing here as opposed to Florida, where the title company and the realtor do pretty much the entire transaction.
Yes, that's an interesting distinction. And I'm glad you brought that up because it really helps people to realize your level of expertise. You're not just the attorney, or you do know a lot about the real estate industry because in your state of New York, where it's a, attorney state, boy, you do a lot more work than the traditional real estate attorney. So it makes me also think this too. You mentioned all those big numbers and working with top producers. You've probably started seeing threads of similarities of the top producers' traits. And, like they say, success leaves clues. So you've probably started noticing over the years, like, wow, the top producers do this, and here's different things that you've logged. And I know you're working on a book on teaching real estate agents how to become a 7-figure producer. So let's start talking through some of the things you have noticed and things that you would like to teach and train on. And I think the first thing is, if you think about growing as a real estate agent, it's like the old movie Jerry Maguire, Show Me the Money. It starts there. Show me how to make more commission. So what do you teach in that area?
Yeah, so great question. So I've also, over the last 10 years, I am an approved New York State licensed professor or teacher, so to speak, of continuing education for realtors here. So I've developed about 15 course topics that I've been presenting to multiple different agencies, and really kind of giving agents negotiation tools and the legal edge to scale their business, make more money, close more deals. So the topic that I'm focusing on lately, especially in today's market, is winning the listing, becoming a negotiation expert, and secrets to become a 7-figure realtor. So my focus with really teaching agents these tools and gaining more listings is pretty much threefold. Okay, so the reason why I think every agent should really focus on gaining exclusive listings and going after sellers as opposed to just buyers with their practice is because they can guarantee a closing much more practically than running around with different buyers who maybe just aren't serious, aren't ready, taking their time. I've known agents that worked for 6 months or a year or even 2 years with the same buyer before they even pull a trigger. So by rerouting and refocusing that energy on the sales side and winning more exclusive listings, which I will lay out during the course of our podcast as well as my book. By focusing on the seller, you can gain more traction 3 ways. One, that seller will most likely become a buyer. Okay, so a lot of sellers, they have different motivations to sell. So one reason could be because they are downsizing, or maybe they're moving outside of the city to the burbs, or maybe they are just changing jobs. So now they have a new territory. So for all of these reasons, you're much more likely to win both the buy and the sale for that client. That's one. Number 2, if you have an exclusive listing, you are going to gain more buyers that come to your open houses or by appointments only. And a lot of those direct buyers may come without an agent. So now, let's say that particular buyer doesn't make an offer on your listing. However, you say, oh, well, if this property isn't to your liking, I have other properties I can show you. I'm very familiar with this building or this area or this neighborhood. Let me show you XYZ. So now you just picked up another client just by virtue of having your exclusive listing. And then the third way is you can also pick up buyers who may want to, purchase your listing, or have a friend or other contacts that are going to want to look at other properties on the basis of that referral. So I really feel like if you gain that direct buyer, you can have more commission. So instead of the 6% co-broke, you can get a 5% direct buy. And now you've increased your commission and you've made more money by having that buyer. And so now you have two sources of referrals. You have two clients that love you for what you do. And now you've just maximized your commission, double, if not
Yeah.
triple.
So you said a couple things I want to go a little bit deeper on that I think will really amplify something because it stood out to me. Motivation. So there's nothing wrong with working with buyers. Of course not. There's agents that will work with buyers and that's what they love. But you made an interesting point about the buyers who are motivated and the sellers who are motivated. Well, if you were focusing on getting the listing, which is working with sellers, they typically should have a motivation to sell because they already are thinking about selling. Maybe it's based on a timeline. Potentially, a buyer could be a first-time home buyer. They already are living in a place. Maybe their motivation isn't such that they must get out by a certain time. Maybe they're just kicking tires, like you said. So I think that that's a huge piece that to keep in mind. So talk a little bit about the value of really zeroing in on the motivation that the sellers have and what benefit that brings to a realtor.
Yeah, sure. So it's always great that, especially when you're preparing for a listing presentation, that you know what is motivating the buyer to sell, or excuse me, the seller to sell. So there's a few factors. One, of course, is timing. Okay, so some sellers might be in a rush because they've already found a property that they have their eye on, and they need to close this sale because they have to get their sale proceeds in order to close on their purchase. So timing is very important to focus on as a seller. Number two, you want to focus on, again, what their motivation is. Maybe their kids are grown and out of the house. Maybe they are maintaining this 5-bedroom, 5,000 square feet home that's really too large for them, and they want to downsize to a 3-bedroom condo. So that, again, and maybe they've been there for 30 years so that they need more time. So these sellers particularly might want 90 days as far as a closing so that they have time to kind of pack up their things and sort through everything. And then the last thing is there are just people that maybe sellers that are retired and just really can't afford, the property anymore. And they're looking to liquidate and get their money out. And maybe rent for a year before they're ready to buy or waiting for the market to shift. Whatever it may be. So by focusing on what motivates the seller, you can really tailor your listing presentation to let them know, hey, I'm ready to hit the ground. I have all of my marketing platforms ready to go. I can get this sold quickly for you. I can get it sold at the right price, and really emphasize that. And then if there's sellers that need a little bit more time, then you can say, look, we have a little bit more time. We can maybe price the property a little higher because you're not in a rush. We're not looking for, a flash sale here. We can price the property a little higher to make sure that you meet your bottom line. And if you're really not looking to move for, 3 to 6 months or whatever it may be, we can kind of wait and really work the market and see, what type of offers we get. Now, keep in mind, Mike, it's really important that we don't have listings sit on the market for too long because we don't want listings to go stale. It does make the property look bad if it's like, oh, it's been on the market for, 5 months.
There must be a problem.
Yeah, what's the issue? How come nobody likes this? So you don't want to price it too high. You still want to make it attractive, but at least when you're negotiating terms that you can work out certain, things. Maybe the buyer is open to a free lease back when you're doing your offer and negotiation. So the seller is like, look, oh, okay, well, I will accept that price. I'll go down a little lower because they're going to give me a free 30-day lease back to stay in my property and get my things organized before I have to vacate. So there's a
But
lot
it
of
gets
different
the
things.
it gets the hook in and gets the momentum
Yeah,
going. That's
right.
a huge point. I think that it is so neat to see if you focus on the sellers, all of these benefits that are coming into the realtor that are focused on commissions. And one thing you also said about open houses, there will be times that someone comes through an open house and they're not
Yeah,
connected to an agent. We're not talking about stealing clients from other agents, but when
right.
that is an unattached buyer, talk a little bit about what you've seen is successful in then making sure in that open house, you as the agent know as much as possible who all has come through so you can follow up
Yeah.
with them.
Sure. Yeah. So great question. So, these days with technology being where it's at, I think it's really great to have some sort of, promotional thing for the buyers that come in, maybe a raffle or a prize or a free gift card. So what I would recommend is that they have a QR code printed, maybe on the kitchen table or the coffee table or wherever. And every agent that walks through the door, you say, hey, scan this QR code, put in your contact info, your full name, best cell number, email, and I will enter you into the drawing, and you could win a free $250, gift card. So that way the agent is able to, and then there will also be a line item there if they're coming with an agent or not, meaning
Right.
if they're direct or if they're represented, because obviously you don't want to go after buyers that are already represented, but that way you have everybody's information that came through the door. It's also a very good tool to use if the listing has expired. Okay, there's always a clause in every listing agreement that if a buyer came through the doors and did not make an offer during the time of the listing term, but that offer came maybe after the term expired, then that agent still is able to collect the commission. Okay, so it's kind
And
of
your
like a,
QR code
yeah,
collection is a way to document that and timestamp it.
exactly. Yeah,
Excellent.
precisely.
Excellent. Okay, excellent. So now in your system of how you're teaching your strategies, we've maximized commissions by focusing on listings and working with sellers. What's the next step?
Okay, so the next step is winning the listing. So it really comes down to the art of self-awareness and mastering the art of selling yourself. So there's a couple things here that every agent should focus on. One is, who is your company? Okay, who is your agency? What makes them the best? What differentiates them from other agencies? Is it their reputation? Is it their, high tech use of marketing? Is it their global reach and platforms? Are they in every state? Are they national and global? And what really kind of sets them apart that you can highlight the benefits of working with you and your company. So first you want to say, and give all the accolades and all the success stories of why your company is the best.
You know,
Next, you want,
I was just thinking about something
yeah,
is there are going to be times that we in our lives bring something up and someone thinks it's the best thing since sliced bread, and
right.
you would go, oh, well, that's just how we do things. So be careful when you're thinking of all the ways to highlight and spotlight the company you work with. Be careful to make sure that you go as deep as possible and
Yeah,
don't let your own blinders go on to go,
right.
oh, we have a great marketing department, of course, but that just might be commonplace to you. But for that client you're talking to,
Yeah,
they might sit up and take notice and say, yes, because I worked with an agent years ago that had no marketing. And I'm so glad you said that. So watch
yeah.
for all of the opportunities to really make your company pop, and don't think you're
Right.
taking it for granted.
Exactly. And I think data goes a long way. So as far as, hey, we've closed, we've closed 70% of all listings, or we've, reached, XYZ $1 billion in closed sales. Data and statistics really go a long way when selling your company. The other, thing is show your company's website, or focus on, maybe they're a boutique agency. Maybe they're not this large, million agents company. So if you're a boutique, say, hey, we really, fine tune. We handle every client with white glove service. You really get personalized service. So there's you don't have to be the biggest to be the best, so
And
you can always
if you're
focus.
small, some people
Mhm.
could think, oh, that's a negative, but you turn it into a positive.
Correct. So it's
Yes.
all about how you position it. And if you're large, then great. You're working with the
Yep.
best and the biggest.
Yep.
It's all the perception of value, and you focus on the highlights of your company.
That's huge. And you talk about marketing and technology. Sometimes I think people think, oh, you're just gonna enter in data entry into the MLS system and that's all you're gonna do, and you hold one open house. No, no, no. Let me tell you what we do. We have this technology. We have mobile apps. We have a whole marketing department who, so I think what you're saying here is so huge to shine that spotlight on who you're associated with. And secondly, you are just one person. You're the agent. Now, yeah, you might have a small team, but when you can shine the light on the company you work with, you now can say, we bring the power of, we have experts who have 100 years of experience combined. And I think that really helps to prop you up as well.
Yes, exactly right. So focusing on the reputation of your company is huge. Next, you want to focus on yourself and who you are, your personal attributes, your personal statistics, your experience, and your success stories. So it's really important for every agent to lead with confidence, lead with enthusiasm, and show this seller that you're passionate about getting their listing and getting the property sold for them, and also try and be relatable to the seller. Google is your best friend. So if you're taking a listing appointment, you want to research that seller, find out who they are, where they work, if they're a family, man or woman, they have kids, and find something that you can relate. Oh, you're a tennis, pro. Hey, I've taken tennis. I did, I was top on my tennis team in college, whatever it may be, because sellers like to work with people that they like. So by virtue of really focusing on who you are and why you would be a great fit beyond just the property, which is absolutely important, and you want to go over everything that you're going to do to showcase this property for the seller, but you also want to be relatable, because if you go in there stiff or not confident or enthusiastic, you're not going to leave the seller with a warm and fuzzy feeling. And at the end of the day, this is business, but it's also, these are people,
Yep.
and relationships that you're building for long term.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring up relationships. I've often heard it said, we don't go to a real estate closing, we go to a real estate opening because we're opening a relationship. So once you've secured it and now you've completed the transaction, we stay in touch. Well, talk a little bit about this stage here where you need to shine the light on yourself. How do
Right.
you do that without coming off sounding like you're bragging and cocky?
Yeah. So that's why I think it's always good. You can start off with who you are, what you do. Again, why you would be the perfect fit for this listing. Maybe you've sold other units in the building or in the neighborhood or in the area. Maybe you live in the same neighborhood or area. So obviously you want to show, those things, those commonalities and similarities that you have, both with the property itself and with the particular client. And you don't want to come across, too showboaty. Like, it was funny. I was at this event yesterday, and the head broker there said, look, you want to show up to every listing appointment looking nice, but not too nice, right? You don't want to roll up to the appointment in your Rolls Royce, or your Maserati, because you're like, oh, this guy's making all this money off of me, so you want to look nice and presentable, and obviously punctuality is really important, but you want to also let them know you're on their level. So you don't want to
Yes.
be pompous, like, oh, you're doing me a favor here, you're lucky I'm taking your listing,
Well, what you said there is huge, and we could talk about 4 hours on that one point alone, but let's
Yeah.
just go one step deeper, which is know your audience. And if your
Yes.
audience would relate to that Rolls Royce or Maserati, then you better pull up in that, unless you don't own one, and don't fake it. But
Right.
here's something that made I want to kind of ask your opinion on. You said know your neighborhood and know. Do you
Yeah.
feel like agents should pick a specific group of neighborhoods, maybe not just one cul-de-sac, but a neighborhood or an
Yeah.
area, and just like
Yeah.
know that inside and out, and research it and almost farm that one area, so that you're not just knowing a little bit about dozens of areas?
Yes, I think that's really important. I think it's important to hone in on that neighborhood. Look, if you live in a certain county and now you're trying to sell in a completely different county that maybe is 2 hours away, that's not really, that's kind of outside of your territory. And you're going to have to learn everything from scratch, meaning the school systems and, the highlights and the restaurants and, attractions. So I think it's really, I think it's a lot more, realistic and just practical that you really focus on your territory and your neighborhood and your area. And it really depends on how you got this listing presentation, so it was it because of a referral? Is it because you sent flyers out because you closed in the building or closed in the neighborhood before? So you're like, hey, I just closed on unit 5A. I got the top dollar. I can close your unit too,
Yeah.
So I think by focusing on what you're great at and where your experience lies is going to go a long way with that particular seller than if you're just
Yep.
out of the box, selling in a neighborhood or a county that you've never sold in.
And like you said, it depends on where you got the initial lead for the listing.
Right.
So if
Yeah.
someone knew you sold unit whatever and they're calling you or was referred, you
Yeah.
might think, well, this is a laydown deal. I'm just going to get it because they called me
Right.
and I was referred. What are some ways that you can make sure you show up to that presentation being positioned as highly and trustworthy as possible?
Yes. So great question. So it's really important that you have your presentation down to a T. So you want to show up very prepared, whether it be a PowerPoint presentation, Google Docs, whatever it may be. And I would say a couple things. One, I think it's great to lead with a promo video of yourself and your company or some sort of marketing material and just say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Client, looking forward to our appointment next week. Here is my marketing video or my marketing flyer for you to review and just take a look at so you have a little bit more information about who I am. Then that already sets the stage for that client. One, they're impressed that you actually sent them something in advance for them to look at. Two, now you've pretty much showcased your talents and who you are, so they have this positive feeling in their mind before they actually meet you. So it really kind of generates that excitement, that buzz before you sit down with them. Then once you're sitting down at the appointment, now, you can focus on who you are and what you do, but you already have that promo video or that marketing material to kind of set the stage for you. So now it's important that you shift and you focus on them. So you focus on the sellers, you focus on their needs, focus on the property. I always think it's a great idea for agents to, take a picture of the front of the property from, whether it be a building or the house, and have that be page one of the presentation. Because then it's like, oh, wow, they've already tailored this. It's not just a cookie cutter, presentation that they use for every client. They've really tailored it to my property. And here's, my home on page one. And then it's also, you have to go over all of the resources that you're going to use and all of the recommendations that you have for them. So data, like I mentioned, is really important as far as comps. What's the average square foot that has closed in that building or in that area? What is your competition? What other units are currently on the market right now that is competing with this property? And then what are you going to use to showcase? Are you going to use drone footage? Are you going to bring in videographers and have like a walking, virtual tour, professional photographers to really showcase? Are you going to do staging, maybe virtual staging? So all of this needs to be listed in your presentation so that you can say, look, seller, I'm here to get this property sold, get you, the biggest bang for your buck. And I'm passionate about it and I'm committed to it.
That's huge. And I think that you laid out a great blueprint right there in that last section of
Mhm.
positioning in the mind of that prospect that you're the obvious choice, even if they were referred to you. You don't take that for granted. And from a psychological standpoint, it is proven by research that when you pre-frame your appointment with those kinds of things, like you mentioned, with, oh, hey, here's this video, or here's some things that I've been mentioned in the media, or whatever the case is, you show up to that appointment as a trusted advisor, not as a salesperson. They know that you're a
Right.
real estate agent. They know you're going to try to sell them into that. But when you pre-frame that, now you've got the chance to then launch into your presentation with all the great content and speak confidently, but speak
Mhm.
at their level, saying,
Yeah.
I realize you need to have this, not here's what I'm going to do. So those are just
Yeah.
such spectacular points that you bring up.
Thank you. And also I think it's important to ask questions. You don't want to do all the talking during the presentation. So yes, obviously they want to hear from you and your services and what you're going to do for them, but also ask them, their questions, get to know them, find out, oh, what do you love most about your home? What have been your most memorable moments here? Maybe birthday parties, maybe, the birth of their second child, whatever it may be, really kind of, because the more that you know the sellers, the more that you know the property, you're really going to showcase that in the showings, in the listing, present, in the marketing material. And so that goes a long way. I've had some agents that have sellers write a letter, about themselves, their home, their history there. And that kind of emotional connection sometimes really stands out for a buyer, and it can go beyond just the property and be like, oh wow, there's just so much love that was filled in this home, and so much happiness, and I really love the energy here. So some buyers, they're not just going to look at the price and the property like it's just some stat. This is going to be their home. It could be their forever home. It could be where they're going to start their own family. So having that personal letter and really knowing who your sellers are and their history there and what they love about the house, I think also goes a long way to connecting to those emotions.
Excellent. Well, Talia, I think that we have covered some spectacular content of what to focus on as far as a seller and the listings and why that's important, and then how to focus then on spotlighting your company and yourself as the obvious choice without tooting your horn and bragging too much, but making sure that that's obvious. So I think that is just so wonderful. If someone is listening or watching this and is interested in learning more, connecting with you, what's the best way they can reach out?
Sure, they can reach out and connect to me through my 360 site, which is tali360.com. That's TALI360.com. And they can message me directly, check out my videos, and looking forward to connecting with everyone.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. It was a real pleasure talking with you.
Thank you so much, Mike, for having me.